This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Yes, it is, and it is me. And I was just discussing with our producer, actually, that's the station owner's husband. She makes sure he works and tries to earn his keep. But, you know, we used to have a good producer. She was good looking and nice and sweet. And
she got smart and left.
Well, you know, that sounds like an ex-wife to me.
Well, she was here about 13, 14 years. It
Yeah,
would almost be like that. Yeah.
You know, I'm reading this thing because we started talking about, can a president forgive or pardon himself for crimes? And there's a section in the Constitution that now I'm reading where, can you believe this, that no two attorneys agree?
Wow.
What a revelation.
Major news story.
So, I looked this up. You know, there's nothing you can't find online. So I looked this up. All of a sudden, it's 40 pages of information. That's because attorneys get paid by the word, you know.
Oh, man. Sure.
340-1590, 340-1590. Anyway, if anybody's got an opinion on this, I'd be curious because here it says, here's another one. Can Trump pardon his associates or himself? President can issue a flurry of pardons, and we were talking earlier that every president has done this, right? And they also forgive for future crimes. Is that what you said, Greg?
Yeah, well, that is what apparently the Justice Department is looking into now. So, yeah, I mean, it's and what CBS is reporting is that they aren't government or White House employees that would be pardoned. So obviously everybody's assuming it would be the president's kids.
It's just, hey, you know, listen, you got to admit, this last few years has been entertaining, and it's not over yet.
Well, it's sad.
Well,
I understand. Yeah, it has been good theater.
It's sad, but, you know, why in the world? Let me ask you this. Now, I'm trying to think of some logical reason why when they did the Constitution, they gave the president powers to forgive people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why would they have done that? Because all these old guys back then, starting off, says, well, we all know that everybody in politics is a crook, so we need to give a president powers to pardon, right?
That's it.
And they knew that at the beginning when they drafted this thing back in the 1700s.
Old George. Where is that? Where was that cherry tree anyway?
Yeah, where was that? Exactly. It's just, I guess, the difference between now and then is the communication was limited back then. Today, you know everything that can be done. You know it in 30 seconds because of the media. Every form of communication is public right now. It's just like looking up these pardons.
You just did that on your phone.
Yeah. It
is amazing. I mean, that's where it's technology.
You
now
can't even have an argument with anybody anymore and make a bet because it's an instant cure, right? Before you even forget with your statement, you can look it up and cheat.
Oh. Well, you know, I think the other problem that we've had, and it sort of came to the forefront a little bit during the Obama administration when they were accusing Fox News of being biased. And then, of course, a flip-flop, you know, with Trump and MSNBC and CNN going nuts. I'll never forget when Carol started at NBC in Burbank. This was in 81, March of 81.
You guys are old.
Oh, yeah. She came home with this book. It's a policy book.
Yeah, don't you love those books?
And, well, let me tell you, there was a thing in there, almost an entire chapter, on advocacy journalism.
Advocacy.
Instant firing at NBC.
Well, so much for that rule, huh?
That's long out the window,
I guess that
man.
book's been altered.
They threw that book away.
Oh, man.
Oh yeah, and you know, there's one local station here that is a very conservative owner, and they tout the fact that they're advocacy journalists.
Well, well, listen, at least they're being honest. I kind of like
it. Actually, in a way, that is.
Yeah. If you're biased, and in fact, what I've often said, in my not too humble opinion, well, I want people to know it's my opinion. It's not necessarily fact, because every one of us has an opinion about almost everything. So, and it's called, if you don't have an opinion, you're the most wishy-washy person in the world.
That's true.
So, look at Cliff.
Cliff is handling the television aspect.
He's back in the corner there because he doesn't have earphones and a microphone, so he's just yelling, jumping up and down. It doesn't count. Now that he has these new hips, he can actually move,
Yeah.
But
our bionic Clifferson.
Bionic, yeah. Have you passed through any metal detectors? Not yet.
Not successfully.
What do you do when you've got all this metal in your body and you go through these metal detectors? Do you have to have a letter from your doctor so they can give you a hall pass or something?
Lay down on your belly and put your arms out. Keep your head down.
Lay down on your belly and put your arms out. You go below the screen, huh?
And where do they put the handcuffs?
Behind you.
Behind you.
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. Back in 2004, Joe Martek, financial advisor, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney. We started doing these radio shows with the simple concept that each of us had a different area of expertise, and people could call in and we could answer questions. And here it is, 16 years later, we're still doing them. I guess we're going to move into our 17th year here in a month. So nobody would have dreamed or believed this would still be going on, but here we are, still doing the same thing. Some things have changed. Greg Fasula is still part of the group. He's right here in Port St. Lucie, probably the only attorney in the whole world I'd like to have as a next-door neighbor because he's just a flat, nice guy. He's not one of those pretentious, arrogant. There's a lot of word that goes after that I can't use on the radio. But he is just a really gentleman and a really gentle person. A good listener, which is also atypical from attorneys.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's the interesting thing with Greg. When I bumped into Greg years ago, when I first started doing what I'm doing now, when I first meet a new prospect or suspect, I ask them if they have a will or a trust. And if they don't, I would normally say, why not? Well, we haven't got around to it. And I said, listen, and I go through a dissertation about will and power of attorney and healthcare surrogate and living will and explain the different documents and why it was a good idea for them to have it. And they'd say, well, Joe, we'd like to do that, but we're really not really versed in that. Would you go with us? So basically, I would go interview attorneys that lived near or were in offices near where these people lived. Now, very often, these attorneys were really nice guys to me when I'm in there interviewing them. But as soon as I showed up with this client, the pretentious, arrogant, bam, jumped out big time. And, many people are intimidated by attorneys because they have, quote, juris doctors. They are, they're literally a PhD or a doctor in the law.
Now, was the attorney addressing you or the other people in the room?
Well, he was addressing them. But I'm sitting there, but all of a sudden, this nice guy, my next-door neighbor, became, hey, now listen, I know what I'm talking about and you don't. So just pay attention and do what I tell you. Well, it's that attitude.
Sure,
How many times have we gone?
Yeah.
I actually had two brothers, friends of mine, not clients of mine. Dad died and Dad left a ton of money. Now, the one brother that was in charge, he kind of thought he knew it all. So he goes and hires this attorney. Then afterwards he talks to me, and I said, man, you got to be out of your mind. You don't need to do this stuff. He said, why? And I said, because you don't. So I went through him. I said, I'll go with you to see this attorney. And this attorney said, well, I want to put this through probate and do that. And I said, come on, guy, you don't have to do that. You just don't have to do that. And he says, well, it's too late. I've done it already. So then I'm into this discussion with the attorney, with the client sitting with me, and the client's not saying a word. He is intimidated. In fact, he says to me, Joe, do we have to wear a shirt and tie when we go see this attorney? And I said, wait a minute. You're the client. You're paying. You can come in
That's
your
right.
boxer shorts if you want. Who cares?
Yeah.
Anyway, so the attorney looks at the client and says, okay, Joe Martek, don't listen to him. Listen to me, because you're paying me $400 an hour. And so far, it's cost you $200 here to hear him talk to you. Well, we left. Now, my buddy, he's jumping up and down mad now, but not when he was sitting with the attorney, because he's still intimidated. And I said, guy, listen, I went through, and I said, quite honestly, there were some mistakes made by different people in this chain of things to the cost of you and your brother and your sister of over 40 grand. Oh. If you want, I will help you recover that 40 grand. Well, there was over $1 million in the estate, so the kids say, hey, the heck with the 40 grand, we'll just take the $1 million. And that's kind of sad, you know what I'm saying? That people can and literally take advantage of people that and they, because of ignorance or because of intimidation, and that's sad. Anyway, that's just one story. So Greg, whenever anything comes up today, after I met Greg, I say, hey, listen, the way it works, period, with this, no matter what question we have, I go to Greg first. Greg says, Joe, I don't handle that, but I know somebody I trust that does. Like bankruptcy, he doesn't do them, but he knows another guy that does, and that's all he does. And when Greg tells me he knows somebody else that he trusts, I take that to the bank. That, to me, is worth volumes. 340-1593.
Yeah. It's refreshing. He wouldn't do a shuck and jive. And, well, it's not my specialty, but I can do it.
Well, Dan, if he was here, by the way, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent's no longer with us. Remember him? He sold his practice. It's now called World Insurance. And quite honestly, to the people that are in that agency, this is to their benefit, because this company has, I think, 9 offices all over the country, and they added another 100 or so companies to that whole portfolio. So what they couldn't handle before, and Dan was, to me, was the premier to start with, having all of these independent companies out there to help the insured. Because, like, if you walk into a captive insurance company, that company's the only one they have. You go into an independent, they got 50, 20, 30. Dan had over 100. Now there's pushing 200 companies inside of that one agency to help people. So it's an important deal.
That's great, yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. And we have a guest member who usually calls me if he's going to be dying or hurting or in a hospital or something, so he doesn't show. This time he didn't even call and tell me he wasn't going to show, but now he's calling me on the radio. So you didn't get evicted again, did you, Alan?
Live from Harper's Pub in Stewart.
No. I have to be completely honest, as I usually always am.
Wait a minute. That was 2 statements there. Usually and always are not. They're not compatible.
And he is an attorney.
You are an attorney. Yes, we have a caveat.
Well, you see, I'm in dreamland. I forgot to set my alarm. With the cold weather, I just slept and slept. I woke up at 11:10 as I turned on my cell phone to see what time it was. And I thought to myself, I'm in dreamland, because the first thing I did was turn on WPSL radio. And you're complimenting an attorney who deserves to be complimented, but I just couldn't believe that you were being so complimentary. So I thought I was still sleeping. And
well, it took you a while to get there, but I could see that where you were going. But that makes perfect sense.
He is still sleeping.
Yeah.
Well, I concur 1,000% in what you said about both Dan Warren and Greg Fasula. They are wonderful people, and I'll tell you something. If I had not overslept, I would have called you and said I wasn't coming in for the morning show, because the lower part of my body is saying, no, you're not moving yet this morning.
Hey, even when it does move, it moves only inches at a time.
I mean, any snail or turtle could beat me in 100-yard race by about 70 yards.
I know.
Well, I do have to ask an intimate question, though. Have you been hit by a falling lizard yet?
They wouldn't even participate because they didn't want to hurt my feelings. But Joe, just so you know, I am going to be with you later.
You think you'll be thawed out by then?
Yeah, I think I'll be thawed out by then because, it's with cerebral palsy, your body just doesn't like it when it turns, and it's not cold like Wisconsin cold, but I'm so used to the Florida weather. And probably when I move to Vegas, the same thing will happen. But I just will, in the winter months, stay in the house a lot more.
Are you still planning on moving in February or March?
Yeah. That's when I'm going to get re-evicted.
Re-evicted, right?
Yes. But,
hey, you kind of remind me of me, when ex-wives, and you weren't even married. So I mean, but you're a little more. How do I put it gently and easily?
Go ahead.
Well, hey,
he can take it.
You know what it is? You're right about Vegas. Vegas gets cold. I mean,
and windy and it's windy all the time.
And you got to watch out for those kebabs. What's that? What's the word when those dust storms? Is it kebab or kaboob or something like that? When those dust storms come, they show them in Arizona a lot of times where they like a wall of. Isn't that the word kaboob or something like that?
There's an Indian terminology to it.
I'll check that out. I've never heard of that term. I have heard of the term without the ka in front, but. I haven't heard of. Yeah,
there is a term for that, and it's like a wall coming at you of sand, because it's just like a whiteout all of a sudden with these storms that come across with the wind once it picks up that stuff, and they happen. The ones that I've seen on the tube were in Arizona, which those of us that have been to Arizona know there's not a whole bunch of difference between that and Vegas. It's pretty dry.
Same desert.
All right, my man. Well, listen. I'm glad you got to sleep in. Not really, but hey, it's called a prerogative that you have.
Oh, and by the way, I did happen to find Alan the number for Fifi, the showgirl that I met when I was doing UNLV basketball. I'll give it to you. Oh, and say I know Carol's not listening to this right now, so I'm safe.
You know what? I am so happy I missed the show live this morning because at 4:00 my relationship with God will be so much more meaningful today after what you said, Greg.
You mean you think you might pick up some demerits on the morning show?
Oh.
Isn't that the usual case? It wouldn't be the same show without it, Joe.
That's it, my man.
Both of you have a great show. I'll see you at 4, Joe.
Got it. See you, my man. 340-1590, 340-1590, which leads me into, now that I've talked nice about Dan's agency and about Greg Fasula, attorney, and now that Alan, our special guest member, who's not a member, but he's been the most consistent member of the group now for like 5 or 6 years, and we will miss him. He will call us in from Vegas, but it's not the same thing. As people.
Oh, he can zoom in though. You'll be able to see him.
Well, do I want to see him?
Sure.
What do you mean, sure?
Piece of cake.
What if he had the dancing girl with him?
But Fifi. Oh yeah.
If he, what he needs to do is to go to the casinos and hang out, and then do the show live from there, right? And we can show it on the tube.
See, all he'd have to do is drop a few $100 bills on the floor, and
yes,
yeah, they'd be there.
I will tell you, when I've been to Vegas, which is not often, I'm not a good gambler. I'm not really a gambler at all. I should just go in and give them the money. But when you're sitting at that blackjack table and the girls come up and they put the an extremity on your elbow and give you a drink. It's the end of me. Just take my money. 340-1590, 340-1590. Then back in around 08 or 09, when the Great Recession occurred, there were certain subjects that came up that we didn't have an area of expertise in, so we brought in Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, who happens to be the hardest working realtor known to man. And she brought in Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, who absolutely educated all of us, or re-educated us, on exactly what mortgages were available, that the fact that that was never true, that there was no mortgage money available.
There was no mortgage money available.
Remember that? The truth.
Oh, boy, did I hear that a lot.
Didn't we, though?
Yeah.
The truth was you had to prove you could afford to make the payment. What a concept. I mean, and that was the old rule that
I think
Fannie...
my parents talked to me about that.
Little minor thing. That's how we were raised, right? Oh, you want money? Uh-huh. You have to prove you can either pay it back or you have to go earn it. What a concept, right? 340-1590, which leads me to Ms. Victoria Lloyd. And, you know, I toot her horn quite often, but not in a lot of detail. The truth is I've known this girl back from about 1980. You know, my prior life, I was
short-term relationship.
I know. I was a real estate broker and a developer, and Victoria was my sales manager on a couple of different properties. So we've always had a close working relationship and a personal relationship. I know her husband forever. I was there at their wedding way back. But every once in a while, and we thank people that do this, we get a client, an existing client or a new client that'll either call us or toot our horn or say nice things about us or write a letter. So Victoria just received a letter from a lady named Deborah Hotmer, and I'm going to read it to you. It's just kind of nice, heartwarming. Dear Victoria, I want to thank you for all your hard work and assistance during the purchase of my property in October, November. It was truly a pleasure working with you and to have you by my side guiding me through this sometimes complicated process. From the moment I explained my time-restricted circumstances to you, you said, we can do this. We will do this. And together we got it done. It was very important to me to work with a seasoned professional, so your empirical knowledge of 1031 requirements was such a plus. 1031, by the way, is tax-free exchange
IRS
from property to property,
yep.
IRS rule. Not everybody knows about this stuff, and a lot of realtors don't. But anyway, she continues, thank you for your professionalism, your dedication, and the patient guidance you provided to me throughout the purchasing process. And thank you for answering the phone every time I called, regardless of the day or time. How many times have I said, if Victoria says she's going to call you at 3 in the morning, don't go to bed. She's going to do it. And that's exactly what she does. Incidentally, it was also such a delight that every time I told a friend, colleague, or local merchant that you were my realtor, their faces lit up and they knew who you are and described just how nice you are. Victoria, you made this transaction as smooth and stress-free as possible. You're a superstar in my book, and I will absolutely recommend you to anyone I know who's looking for a truly professional, kind, and knowledgeable realtor. Thank you for everything. XOXO. Sincerely, Deborah Hotmer. Anyway.
That's very nice.
Isn't that nice?
A real letter?
A real letter.
It's not an email.
It may have
This
been.
is something real.
Well, it may have been an email.
No,
because,
I'm just kidding.
Well, you know, and
That's really sweet.
you know what? Speaking of which, so my love of my life, we're together now 12 months and 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I want to buy you something for Christmas. And I said, you know what I really like for Christmas? And she says, what? And I said, I would like a handwritten letter. A handwritten letter. Now, you know, Greg, when you just said that, you just reminded me, when's the last time anybody ever mailed you a handwritten letter?
Oh, it's been a couple of years.
At least.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe longer. My point is this. I used to do this with my daughter, my oldest daughter. We would write letters back and forth to each other. And I cherished every one of those. I really did. They were the most magnificent things going. Wait till my daughter sees what I got her for Christmas this year. Something that just tore my heart out when I read it. And I'm going to make a big production out of it. Anyway, so I said, I would like a handwritten letter. You know, we talk to each other and profess our love, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, to get it in writing, handwritten, You know what I'm saying?
That's cool.
Not typed.
No,
Handwritten. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to write one back to her handwritten. I haven't started it yet, but I better start it pretty soon because, I'm an old guy like me.
Got a couple of weeks, man. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I got like 3.
And we're both real old, so it's
But
it may take that.
You look much older. Though.
I know.
That's it. 3, 4. Anyway, so I wanted people to know that Victoria is truly in the real estate. Here comes the thing, Greg. To get a real estate license, you don't have to know anything about anything. You don't have to have any experience in business. You don't have to have any sales training courses. You don't have to know anything. You just go take a test, and you become a licensed real estate person. Then you go to work for a realtor on a straight commission basis, and they rarely say no to anybody. They'll hire anybody that wants to walk.
You had to do a whole continuing education.
Well, once you're licensed, you then have to continue to educate to make sure you're not fried.
Okay, yeah.
So, it's all professionals, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, financial advisor, or realtors. They have in order to keep your licenses, you have to have a continuing education courses that you take regularly. And it's a good thing because one of the things that happens is, what if you are out to lunch? Your brain goes and you're still working and practicing, but you can't pass your continuing education. Well, that's kind of a clue you shouldn't have a license anymore.
And things change. I mean, laws change.
Amen. Well, listen.
Especially in your business.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, attorneys, here we go again, get paid by the word. And if they're not charging and they're not doing it, if you ever ask an attorney an opinion, that's your first mistake. Now, if you get 2 attorneys and you want 2 separate opinions, oh my Lord, the volume just got thicker. It just goes on and on.
What got me about your business was the fact that you had so many, I guess you want to call them incursions from the federal government when they created this whole bureaucracy to really go after financial planners.
Well, it's an interesting thing when you talk about this because, we watch the commercials on TV.
Yeah.
And this guy says, well, I'm better than the rest of you guys because I'm this, I'm that, and I've got 93 years in the business and I'm only 14 years old. But bottom line is, have you ever noticed that a crook, no matter what, is going to be a crook? Yeah. And I think about like Bernie Madoff. He had every credential there was. He was hot stuff when it came to license.
He had to be so slick.
Well, bottom line is, he's in jail for the rest of his life, which is only right. But the situation is that if a crook is a crook, they'll find a way around it. And no matter what, they'll find a way around. Now, what a lot of people don't know, guys like me, financial advisor, I've got lots of licenses, but we have a broker-dealer. A broker-dealer of mine is called Centaurus Financial, and if you listen to the beginning of the show, there's a disclaimer that comes on that has to be read, and there's one at the end that has to be read. That's got nothing to do, but everybody, when they talk about anything, if you're working with a broker-dealer, they just go through that whole disclaimer. Well, in a normal broker-dealer, we're a member of FINRA, which is a regulatory agency, and SIPC, which is insurance that covers up to $1 million in fraud. So if a person is defrauded, let's say the agent isn't collectible. Well, there's SIPC, and the broker-dealer is responsible because the broker-dealer, he is supposed to be supervising and making sure this person is honest and doing what they're supposed to do. Just as a quick example, this is a few years ago. I go to see this fella, another old guy like us, and he's showing me how he was taken advantage of. He had invested money in something and lost like crazy. And I said, I know that investment. You don't qualify for that investment. He said, what do you mean you don't qualify for it? Well, there's what's called certain types of investors don't qualify for every type of investment. You have to be a qualified investor to buy things that are extremely risky.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Well, there's one thing. It's called, how do you qualify? We have to have at least $250,000 your income or $1 million net worth to make you this, quote, qualified investor. And I said, well, you don't have either. You I can get you your money back. He said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, no. I picked up the phone in his house, called his broker-dealer office, talked to the manager, and I told her the story that we just went through. And she said, yeah, well, that guy that did that is no longer in the business.
Ooh.
And I said, well,
Don't sue.
Well, she says, I said, how do we file a formal complaint so he can get his money back?
Ooh.
And she goes, hang on a minute. Puts me on hold, comes back and says, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give him back half of his money and he gets to keep the stock. Is that acceptable? He's right there, standing there. He goes, yeah. And I said, okay, fine. Send him a check with a release and he'll sign it. And that was done like in 10 minutes.
Wow.
But see, the key is he never should have been sold that in the first place. And the broker-dealer is supposed to supervise him to make sure he's not doing these things. Well, it's impossible because people can phony documents up all the time. In life, Lord save me. In my continuing education courses, mortal sins, if I ever acknowledged, signed, initialed somebody else's name on something, I get drawn, quartered, shot, and then knocked out of the business. There's certain things you just are not allowed. There's no room for error, period. You just can't do these things. So what happens is the regulatory agencies, they try like crazy to protect the consumer, but a crook's a crook. I mean, I don't care how it goes. A crook's a crook, and it happens constantly. Like, Greg, I talk almost every other show about, quote, these index annuities.
Yes.
And people think, gee, this sounds so good. I can be invested in an index like the Standard & Poor's 500 that so far this year is up. Let's see. I think I did it. I think I wrote it down. As of today, the S&P 500 is up 13.76% for the year.
Wow.
Okay. And this is
not bad.
Not bad. So people say, hey, I can be invested in that with this index annuity. But if there's no downside, my money's protected. And I said, well, little minor caveats, because the index annuity is what's called a fixed annuity. Fixed, F-I-X-E-D. Fixed means it pays interest. Oh. What they say is, you got to be careful of the wording, that you're going to be paid interest based on the performance of the index. You're not invested in the index. You're not invested in stock.
Come on.
But the average person never hears these words word for word. And if the guy that's telling them tells them word for word, they don't understand them. They think they're actually invested in this thing. Because then the next thing that comes up, and to this date, I have never seen one person that I bump into with these contracts, not one yet, I'm sure one will come out, that was ever told about the cap, C-A-P. Cap. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, because a fixed annuity, 80% at least of the investment has to be in the bond market. You know what bonds are paying now? 2-3%.
It's got to be nothing.
Yeah. 2-3%. Now, subtract from 2 the insurance company's fees, expenses, and so on. What can they pay? Around 1. Okay, so the one I just saw last week, the cap was 1.75. That's the most that could be earned. So the S&P is up 13% for the year. This client will earn 1.75.
So I don't have 10,000 shares of Amazon?
No, you don't have any shares of anything. You have a fixed index annuity. Oh. Be very, 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 very careful. And I go into some detail on that because people think they are protected. Now, let's take a fixed annuity. Fixed annuity says it pays an interest rate. Okay, so it's going to pay 1, 2, 3%. That's fine. If you know that's what it's paying, you're straight up, and that's fine. The index annuity says we're going to pay you based on the performance of the index. Well, what if the index doesn't make anything? Well, you don't make anything. What if it makes 20%? Oh, you get your cap. You make 1 3/4 or 2 or 2.5 or 3, whatever the cap is. Some of these companies allow that cap to change every year. The insurance company can change the cap. Now, do you think they're going to change it in your favor? Of course not. The key thing is this. The insurance company, in order to make a profit, if they're making 3 minus their expenses, they might be able to pay 2. But they can't pay 20 and 30. They will go out of business. And regulators will come in and say, you can't do that because it's against the rules. so they can be put out of business, taken over by another company. All I'm trying to tell people is I love annuity contracts. I love the idea of just a straight fixed contract that pays an interest rate. You know what you're getting, 2%, 3% for 5 years, 10 years. As long as you know up front that's what it is. And I love the
I think
idea.
I'd like something like that. That makes a lot of sense.
It does. Well, you go to the bank, I'm going to make a quarter or a half or whatever it might be. Okay, fixed annuity says for the next 5 years we'll pay you 3%. Let's just use that. I don't know if they pay in 3 now. It might be 2.5. I don't do much of them today because the interest rate's so low. But if you know up front that's what you've got, that's what you've got. Now, where's the negative with that contract? Well, the negative is that's what you're going to get for the next 5 years. So interest rates go up, you don't go up. You're going to stay right there. And the other negative is there's a penalty for early withdrawal. So it's like a CD at a bank. You're going to pay a penalty if you cash it in early. Sometimes the penalty with the fixed contract is more severe. You have to know that also. You have to know that before you make a decision. So let's talk about real investing. Real investing. Standard & Poor's 500. You've heard of that. Mm-hmm. We talk about that all the time. That is called the benchmark in the financial industry. Why is it the benchmark? Every day, every year, it is published. Anybody that wants to look in the newspaper, on the tube, that's a constant given, the S&P 500. There's also, when you turn on the tube or whatever, you'll see the Dow. The Dow is 30 companies. The S&P 500 is 500 companies. It's 500 of America's biggest companies. These are American-based companies. It's called the benchmark because every mutual fund or exchange-traded fund or whatever's out there being sold as an investment uses that as a gauge to say, are we doing better or worse than the S&P 500? Now, that's a good gauge. So this year, it's up so far this year, 13.76%. Last year it was up 30%. The year before it was down 6%. What happens is there's no guarantee it's going to go up or down. It's based on the performance of these different 500 companies, and it's also based on the projections these companies put out for the next 6 months to a year. So people don't buy it based on what they're doing today. They buy it based on what they think is going to happen 6 months or a year from now.
Which, in a way, is the way the market works.
That is the way the market works.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other side of the coin is if you're a publicly traded company, you're under the scrutiny of the SEC. You have to be very careful on what statements you make. Forward guidance, it can't be speculation, I don't know what I'm doing, shooting from the seat of your pants. It's got to be based on something. Like if you're, let's say, Boeing, and you've got contracts from 20 different countries for more planes next year, well, that's forward guidance. If you're General Electric and you make jet engines, you got forward guidance. So you know what's going to come kind of.
For 30 years.
Yeah. Well, so you have an idea what's going to happen.
Sure.
So what happens is the market, the S&P 500, basically is traded every day based on what people think is going to happen 6 months to a year from now. So right now, market's been hotter than a pistol for the last month or so. Why? Well, all of a sudden we got COVID taken care of, right? We're not getting a shot yet, but we have these vaccines, so people are anticipating that starting next month or all the way through next year, all of a sudden COVID is going to be taken care of and we'll get back to normal. So anticipation, projections, that's what that's about. Now, people say, okay, Joe, there's 3,000 different mutual funds. Yeah? Which one should I be invested in? I said, okay, well, let's just ask you a question. If the Standard & Poor's 500 has averaged 10% a year for the last 90 years, average, does that sound bad or good to you? I mean,
well, I'd rather have 20 or 30%.
Okay.
No, I know. Yeah,
but
sure.
everybody, and no, literally, that's exactly what everybody says or thinks, that, yeah, 10 is wonderful. 10 is wonderful because I can get a half of a quarter of one in the bank, so 10% is a great thing. So, yes, okay. So I say to people, okay, fine. If you're okay with that, let's use the benchmark, the biggest single thing, and be invested in that. So I have a young man who inherited $100,000 from Dad. He's not going to spend the money forever. And I said, hey, you can be invested in the S&P 500. It's average 10% a year. But let's split it up 50-50 and go into the NASDAQ 100, which is average 15% a year, for the last 10, 15 years, which is heavily loaded in tech companies. And coincidentally, that's up 37% this year. So if you blend 50-50,
Yeah.
a 13 and a 37, that's called pretty good money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when you're invested in this and the market goes down? You go down too. But if you're young, you got a long window, you're in your 20s or 30s, even 40s, you're going to be working another 20, 30, 40 years. And if you're in the radio business, you're working until you die, is there retirement contracts for people in the radio business?
Actually, yeah, it's a deal with the Hazley Funeral Home.
Uh-huh. Very good. So Hazley gives you a retirement
Rick,
package.
Rick is already.
What I'm trying to say is that people that plan on having a real retirement at 65 or 60 or whatever the number is,
What?
they have the less time you have to invest money, the more cautious you have to be. It's a situation that you have to be careful. Anyway, when you're young, I say to people, fine, you can be invested strictly in the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, or any type of thing. You've got time to ride the wave. But also, they're 100% liquid. Liquid means I can buy it today and I can sell it today. So I don't have to hold it ad infinitum. I can buy it and sell it. People say, well, gee whiz, Joe, I don't know when to do that. I say, well, nobody does exactly. But if you're young, you've got time to run. But if you ever get in the mood to cash in a portion of it or all of it, you can, just like that. 340-1590, 340-1590. And we have a caller. Hey, Paul, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to miss Dan. He's not going to be on the show anymore?
No, Dan is officially retired. He's moved up to Sanford. I call it Sanford. He calls it Lady Lake or Lady Mary, whatever. But he's got grandkids and stuff, and so, hey, you know what happens, Paul? Some of us guys
get him in as a guest host sometimes.
Well,
He's probably going to do a fishing show or something.
He said he was going to do that, but we'll find out if his wife's got a chain on him. So you know how you might understand that.
Hey, question on that annuity. There's a fixed, which is a locked-in amount,
Right?
And the index is the one that follows the market.
Correct.
If it's up, you get whatever the cap is. Like you said, they can make 20%, but if your cap is 2, you're going to get that 2.
That's it.
So basically, and you're not invested in anything. So it's like you're making the insurance company a loan of your money.
Well,
They do what they want with it and just...
Well, that's what you think they do what they want, but you're kind of right. When you do
you're within limits.
Within limits. When you do a fixed annuity, the insurance company has to put the money primarily in bonds. So that's called the rules when you do a fix. But I guess they have some 20% rule if they can put some money some other places. But the bottom line is, when it's fixed, the government says you cannot be speculating with that money, Mr. Insurance Company. You have to be pretty solid because you're guaranteeing these people a fixed interest rate.
And in Florida, you've got the protection of the state with the annuities, too, don't you, in case of anything?
Yeah, you actually have that in every state in America.
Oh, is it every state?
Yeah. So what happens is...
I recently went to a presentation, and, they promote it like you're invested in these.
Listen, Paul, what you just said is what I warn people about constantly because every time you go to a seminar... I have never heard one of them come up and explain this in detail, that you're not invested in the index, they never say that, not that I've heard, and I've never heard one of them explain the cap, saying, hey, by the way, if it goes up 20, you only get 2 or 3, whatever the cap is.
Well, this one did, but still, it's like you said, it could be 20% or 13, and you're locked in, and then with the expenses and stuff, involved with it, it eats it up quick.
Well, the bottom line is it's an interest rate, that's period. It's no different than going to the bank and get your quarter or your half. You're going to get whatever you've got, whatever your contract says. The index annuity, one of the problems with it is, too, let's say the market goes down. You don't go down, but you don't make anything that year. You then the next year it goes up 20 when you got a cap of 2 or 3. That's all you can make. So you might have been better off in just a straight fixed paying 2 or 3% every single year for 5
every
years.
year.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. At
But
least
they always say you didn't lose anything. Don't forget, you didn't lose anything.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what
but
they.
you didn't make anything either.
Well, that's what they say. So you're leading me to my favorite subject, which means I'm going to get into it in a minute, but I appreciate the fact you're paying attention there and you've been to a couple of these free lunches or dinners, huh?
I try to do my homework on it.
Good man.
Hey, and a while back, or last week, you mentioned it also about paying for the health care for all with the value-added tax. And a while before, when Dan was still around, Evan, they had a thing going that they were going to present to Brian Mast. Did that ever materialize?
Well,
So that
no.
he could introduce some kind of a bill?
I was going to try to put that numbers together to produce it, to give it to Mass, but when it got up over 20% value-added tax to cover for that, I just said, it's kind of a waste in time. And sure, good old Brian would never be espousing that because he'd never get reelected.
Okay. I remember that going, and it didn't sound like it was going to be too much, and that would have been a perfect way to do it, and that everybody's got some skin in the game, and it's feasible. It could be done. But
well, guess what? If you go to go to Europe, they have a value-added tax. It's roughly 12 to 13% on everything in every country. Every country. They have, a national health care programs. Well, you buy a hamburger in Sweden or Denmark, you're going to pay $30. I mean, it's just the way it is. So, but listen, no free lunches in the world, of course, unless you're a politician.
No.
We know that.
Hey, none of them has missed a meal or anything, and all this lost a home, had a mortgage foreclosed on, nothing.
They're not a lot.
And
Yeah.
they have done nothing for all this time.
Hey, listen.
But they never lose.
They never lose. But hey, guess what? We have the power to vote them in and out. And dumb as we are, we keep voting in the wrong people. But hey, that's because we're just consistent.
Keep saying that.
Yeah.
They don't let them do anything. You put one new person, and he can't even go to the bathroom unless they let him. You got to raise your hand like you're in school.
Well, you got to call Ocasio up and get her permission, right?
There you go.
Yeah,
I got a question for you. Was the food good at the seminars?
Yeah, it was good. I enjoy that.
Hey, Paul, listen. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate you calling in.
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, my man. 340-1590, 340-1590. And we got Ricky. Is Ricky on the radio? You're on the radio, Ricky, now.
Hey, Joe, how are you? Hi, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I have two questions for you. I got my wife and I have two college boys are coming out, and what is the first question? It's two of them. The first one is, what financial advice do you have for them, and how to borrow or save, or since money it's 2 or 3% to get a mortgage. Like, what's your what would you say to your son for financial to get them started, and advice do you have? And the second question is, what marital advice do you have for him? It seems like women can be your kryptonite a little bit from listening to the show.
No.
First of all, if anybody listened to my advice on women, they're crazy. That's number one. That's my advice. So don't listen to me.
I've liked all of your ex-wives.
Hey, my mother did too. Anyway, the key thing I'm trying to say is when you're a young, Ricky, you and I were both young one time, and you know what ruled our thinking.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so your boys are no different than anybody else. And, the passion is magnificent when you're young, and it's a wonderful thing. Then you find out that you can't do that more than, let's say, an hour a day. What are you going to do with the other 23 hours? So the key thing to try to teach these kids, when I used to say to my boys, now forgive me, I can't necessarily say this whole thing on the radio, but I'll say, do you still love that girl when you're done doing what you wanted to do? Do you want to still be with her when you're done doing what you wanted to do? And my one kid says, no, I want to go watch football. And I said, well, you may not be in love. You may not be ready for marriage. You and I both know that commitment, to many, it means something. Some of my wives didn't agree with that, but what can I tell you? Second, let's talk about a young man and investing or whatever. Here's I'm a bit different than a lot of financial guys that say to kids, start saving right away. Number one, when I ask any young man, are you going to get married? Yes. Are you going to have kids? Yes. Okay. Are you going to buy a house? Yes. I said, okay. Before you start saving for retirement, put the cart and the horse in a proper order. In other words, get married, buy a house, have kids, and then start saving. Because I've seen too many young people put money into retirement accounts and then cash them in, pay the tax and a penalty, because the rules are if you take the money out before age 59 and a half, you pay a penalty. So, and they do that because they need the down payment on the house, because they don't have Ricky as a father that's loaded with money that can just give the kids the money, right?
Right. Yeah, sure. Like that's going to.
I mean, what good are fathers for if they don't have lots of money? Let's face it.
I think the smart thing is what you said is invested in condos. Condoms.
There's a joke there that I can't tell on the radio, but it's sure appropriate. Ricky, my man, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. I guess, did I lose him already?
I don't know.
Ricky, are you there?
I don't think so.
No? Hey, I think he might be gone, or else he's laughing off the radio. Whatever.
He may be.
340-1590, 340-1590. I got 1 minute left. Let me just tell you, folks, you can get into a variable annuity. You're supposed to know the claims paying ability of the insurance company, because that's what my compliance people say. But a variable says you are in the market. You can be invested literally in the market. You can be invested in all of these different funds, including the S&P 500. So I got clients up here right now that are up 30% for the year, even after the insurance company gets their cut. Because what the insurance company does, they have what's called riders that puts on there that says, hey, we're going to guarantee you an income for life based on the high water mark, and that number can never go down as long as you stay within the program of taking 5 or 6% out a year. And then it also has a death benefit that protects the money in case you die on the wrong day. Now, as funny as that may sound, if you put your money in on January 1st, you put $100,000 in, by March 20th, before market took a tank, you were up maybe to 120, but then all of a sudden it went down 25 or 30% that day, and you died that day, your family got a lot less money. And your kids want Maseratis. They don't want Pintos. Anyway, I think we're out of time, Chief, are we? And
We are.
Until next week, thanks so much. Bye.
That is a nice-looking coat, Joe.
Hey, be surprised
You've
what's in
been
a closet
listening
that
to
you
the
have.
Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.